Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Brother stole my wife and almost destroyed my life. I took cruel revenge, found peace with perfect woman. I installed hidden cameras in my own home and discovered my wife of 25 years was sleeping with my brother on my dead father's desk, the same desk where he taught us that family loyalty meant everything. What followed was the most calculated revenge in Texas history, executed at a black tie gala with 500 witnesses, federal agents, and a projector screen that would change everything. This is the true story of how I lost everything I believed in, destroyed the two people I loved most, and somehow built a $1 million empire from their ashes. Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments, and if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. The morning sun cast long shadows across the paddocks as Arthur stood on the wraparound porch of his ranch house, breathing in the familiar scent of hay and leather that had defined his life for 25 years. Houston's skyline shimmered in the distance, a reminder of how close civilization pressed against his slice of Texas paradise. At 58, he'd built something worth protecting here, 40 acres of prime horse country, a thriving construction supply business in town, and what he'd always believed was a rock-solid marriage. "Coffee's getting cold, honey," Daisy called from inside, her voice carrying that musical lilt that had first caught his attention at a barn dance decades ago. She appeared in the doorway, still beautiful at 45, her auburn hair catching the light as she handed him his favorite mug, the one with the faded logo of their ranch. "Just watching the sunrise," Arthur said, pulling her close with his free arm. 25 years next month. Can you believe it?" She smiled, but something flickered behind her green eyes. Time flies when you're breaking horses and building empires. That was his Daisy always had a way with words. She'd grown up on a failing dairy farm 20 miles south, the youngest of 5 kids who'd learned early that charm could open doors that hard work alone couldn't budge. When Arthur had spotted her at that dance, fresh out of college with his business degree and big dreams, she'd been serving drinks to make ends meet. He'd been smitten instantly. "Speaking of building," a familiar voice boomed from the driveway, "looks like someone's been busy expanding the stable." Arthur's older brother, Elliot, emerged from his pristine white Cadillac, every inch the successful real estate developer pressed khakis, polo shirt with his company logo, that easy confidence that came from 3 decades of turning dirt into gold. At 55, Elliot had the same strong jaw and broad shoulders as Arthur, but where Arthur's hands were calloused from work, Elliot's were manicured, adorned with a gold-class ring from UT Austin. "Had to make room for the new quarter horses," Arthur said, accepting his brother's firm handshake. "Business has been good, even with the economy going to hell." "That's because you're smart," Elliot said, his gray eyes so like their father's scanning the property with an appraiser's calculation. "Diversified portfolio, horses for the heart, hardware for the wallet. Dad would be proud." Their father had been dead 5 years now, but his presence still loomed large. A third-generation Texan who'd built his fortune in cattle, he'd drilled into his sons the importance of family loyalty above all else. "Blood before money," he'd always said, because when the dust settles, kin is all you've got. "You're early for Sunday dinner," Daisy observed, her hand resting lightly on Arthur's arm. "Everything all right at the office? Can't a man visit his baby brother without an agenda?" Elliot's laugh had that practiced quality Arthur knew well, the salesman's deflection. "Actually, wanted to run something by you, Art. New development opportunity out east. Ground floor stuff. Could triple your investment in 18 months. "Let's talk about it over brisket," Arthur suggested. "Made my dry rub yesterday." The morning ritual continued, Arthur firing up the massive smoker he'd welded himself, Daisy preparing her famous potato salad, Elliot holding court on the patio with stories from the country club. It was a scene they'd played out hundreds of times, as comfortable and worn as Arthur's favorite boots. But comfort, Arthur would later reflect, was just another word for blind. "I should check on the Henderson's mare," Daisy announced after lunch, dabbing her lips with a napkin. "She's getting close to foaling." "On a Sunday?" Arthur raised an eyebrow. That's what we pay Doc Morrison for. You know I don't trust anyone else with the bloodstock. She kissed his cheek, her perfume different somehow, something new and expensive. Besides, I'm on the club board now. Have to set an example. The riding club had been Daisy's project for the past year, her way of connecting with Houston's horse community. Arthur supported it. Lord knew she deserved her own interests after years of helping him build the business. I'll drive you, Elliot offered, already reaching for his keys. Need to head that direction anyway, showing a property to some folks from Dallas. On a Sunday? Arthur echoed his earlier question. $1 million deals don't keep bankers hours, little brother. They left in a swirl of dust and diesel exhaust, Daisy's laughter trailing through the truck window. Arthur watched them go, a strange unease settling in his stomach like a stone. He shook it off. This was Texas. In 2008, the economy might be circling the drain, but family was still sacred. He spent the afternoon in his office, a converted bedroom that looked out over the main paddock. The walls were covered with photos him and Daisy on their wedding day, Elliot and him at their father's funeral, championship ribbons from various shows. His father's prized Colt Python revolver sat in a display case behind the desk, a reminder of the old man's belief in protecting what was yours. The laptop hummed as he reviewed accounts. The construction supply business was weathering the storm better than most contractors still needed materials, even if they were building less. The ranch was pure profit now, boarding fees from Houston's wealthy looking for a place to keep their expensive hobbies. His phone buzzed, a credit card alert. The St. Regis Houston $500. Arthur frowned. He'd been in Dallas 3 days ago at a livestock auction. Daisy must have. The landline rang, interrupting his thoughts. Darling, I'm so sorry. Daisy's voice came through breathless. Julia from the club insisted on lunch after we checked the mare. You know how she gets when she's celebrating her daughter just got into Rice. I used the wrong card by mistake. I'll transfer it from my account. It's fine, Arthur heard himself say, though something cold was spreading through his chest. How's the mare? Perfect. Should foal within the week. A pause. Elliot showed his property and made it back in time to join us. He says that investment opportunity is really something special. You should listen to him. I always do. After they hung up, Arthur sat staring at the credit card statement on his screen. The St. Regis was 40 minutes from the Hendersons' ranch, in the opposite direction. He closed the laptop and walked to the window, watching his horses graze in the evening light. His father's voice echoed in his memory. Trust your horse, trust your gun, and trust your gut. When all three are telling you something's wrong, you'd best listen. The safe behind the display case held important documents and family valuables. Arthur spun the combination his and Daisy's anniversary date and checked inside. Everything seemed in order except the Colt Python had been moved, just slightly, but Arthur had positioned it precisely after the last cleaning. Someone had handled it. Only he and Daisy knew the combination. Outside, storm clouds gathered on the horizon, unusual for the season. Arthur closed the safe and returned to his desk, where he opened a new browser window. After a moment's hesitation, he typed, Wireless security cameras, Houston, Texas. Blood before money, his father had said. But what happened when blood itself became the betrayal? The cursor blinked on the screen as Arthur made his choice. The cameras arrived in unmarked boxes 3 days later, small enough to fit in Arthur's palm. He'd driven to an electronics store on the far side of Houston, paid cash, given a fake name. The whole transaction felt dirty, like something from one of those TV dramas Daisy watched while he read the Livestock Weekly. Installing them was easier than he'd expected. One behind a row of books in the living room, angled to cover the sofa and entryway. Another in his office, tucked behind a dusty trophy from his bull riding days. He told himself he was protecting the house crime was up with the economy tanking. Told himself this had nothing to do with the growing collection of irregularities he'd been cataloging. The late-night ATM withdrawals when Daisy was supposedly asleep. Elliot's truck in the security footage from the ranch's front gate, time-stamped during Arthur's overnight trips. The way conversations stopped when he entered rooms, pregnant silences that felt heavy with unspoken words. You're getting paranoid, old man, he muttered, adjusting the camera angle one final time. But paranoid men didn't find their wife's jewelry box rearranged, with that tennis bracelet she'd admired at Elliot's country club suddenly nestled among her grandmother's pearls. The next morning, Arthur announced a 3-day trip to Austin. Big contractor going under. Estate sale on equipment could save us thousands. Daisy barely looked up from her coffee. Drive safe, honey. I'll hold down the fort. He did drive to Austin, checked into a motel under his company name, made sure to use the credit card at a restaurant that evening. Then he drove back in his ranch foreman's truck, parking a quarter-mile from his own property and hiking in through the back pasture. The house sat dark against the star-filled sky. Arthur settled into the tack room with his laptop, the camera feeds glowing on the screen. He felt like a fool, like a jealous teenager spying on his girlfriend. What did he expect to see? Daisy doing needlepoint? At 10:47 p.m., Elliot's Cadillac pulled into the driveway. Arthur's hands tightened on the laptop. On screen, Daisy opened the door before Elliot could knock. She wore the silk nightgown Arthur had given her last Christmas. "Wine," he heard her say through the living room camera's audio feed. "You know what I want," Elliot replied. And the casualness of it, the familiarity, sent ice through Arthur's veins. What followed was a massacre of everything Arthur had believed about his life. On his laptop screen, in high-definition clarity, his wife and his brother came together like lovers who'd choreographed every move. They didn't fumble like guilty parties. They moved with the confidence of long practice. "God, I've missed this," Daisy breathed, pulling Elliot down onto the sofa, the same sofa where Arthur read his morning paper, where they'd opened Christmas presents, where he'd held her during her mother's funeral. 2 days is too long, Elliot agreed, his hands in her hair. "When's the old fool coming back?" "Thursday. We have time." Old fool. The words hit harder than any physical blow. Arthur forced himself to keep watching, to bear witness to the complete destruction of his world. They moved to his office next, and the desecration of that space, his sanctuary, made bile rise in his throat. On his father's desk. The desk made from mesquite wood harvested from the family's original homestead. "The Woodlands deal closes next month," Elliot said afterward, pouring himself whiskey from Arthur's private stock. $3 million profit, minimum. Could set us up nice." "And Arthur?" Daisy traced patterns on Elliot's chest. "I'm tired of playing rancher's wife." "Give it time. Economy's hitting him hard. Few more bad months, he'll be begging me to buy him out. Then we'll have it all, the ranch, the business, everything." "I want that new Lexus," Daisy pouted. "The LS 460. After the deal closes. Can't have baby brother getting suspicious now." Elliot stood, reaching for his clothes. "Speaking of which, where'd you put his daddy's gun? Thing makes me nervous sitting there." "In your desk drawer at the office. Told him I sent it for cleaning last month." Daisy laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "He actually thanked me for thinking of it." Arthur's vision blurred. The Colt python, his father's last gift, the symbol of everything the old man had stood for, in Elliot's desk drawer like a trophy. He watched them kiss goodbye, watched Elliot's taillights disappear, watched Daisy hum to herself as she changed the sheets and sprayed air freshener, erasing the evidence with practiced efficiency. Arthur sat in the dark tack room until dawn, the laptop battery dying as the sun painted the sky pink. His hands had gone numb hours ago, or maybe that was his heart. He walked back to his truck in a daze, drove to Austin on autopilot. In the motel bathroom, he vomited until nothing came up but bile and bitterness. Then he showered, shaved, put on his good boots and his wedding ring, and drove home to face the rubble of his life. "How was the sale?" Daisy asked brightly, kissing his cheek at the door. Her lips felt like a brand. "Productive," Arthur managed. "Learned a lot about value and depreciation." That evening he called Mike Rodriguez, sheriff of their county and his friend since high school. "Need to talk. Private-like." They met at a diner on the county line, the kind of place where coffee came black and questions didn't get asked. Mike took one look at Arthur's face and signaled for a booth in the back. "Before you say anything," Mike said quietly, "ask yourself if you really want to know what I might tell you." "You knew?" The words came out strangled. "Suspected. Elliot's truck at your place when you're gone. Daisy at the St. Regis when she's supposed to be at club meetings. Mike stirred his coffee slowly. Was hoping I was wrong. I have video. Mike's weathered face tightened. Jesus, Art. Need to know my options. Legal ones, Arthur added when Mike's expression shifted. I'm not my father, Mike. Won't be settling this with firearms. Thank Christ for that. You called Jaden Washington yet? Best divorce lawyer in Houston, and he owes you from that business loan way back. Calling him tomorrow. Arthur pushed his untouched coffee away. What about theft? The gun? If you can prove it, that's a felony. But Art. Mike leaned forward. You sure you want to go scorched earth? This gets out. It'll destroy them both. Arthur thought about Old Fool, about his father's desk, about 25 years of lies. They made that choice, Mike. I'm just going to hold up the mirror. That night, Arthur played the devoted husband perfectly. He complimented Daisy's pot roast, listened to her chatter about the riding club, even suggested they plan something special for their anniversary. Maybe a trip? Daisy suggested, eyes bright with false enthusiasm. Somewhere tropical? Maybe, Arthur agreed, thinking of the cameras still recording, the evidence mounting, the phone call to Jaden in the morning. Or maybe something closer to home, something memorable. He went to bed beside his wife of 25 years, stared at the ceiling, and planned the complete annihilation of the two people he'd loved most in the world. Outside, the horses whinnied in their stalls, restless as the storm approached from the west. Arthur listened to their warnings and prepared for war. Jaden Washington's office occupied the 40th floor of a gleaming tower in downtown Houston, all glass and chrome and calculated intimidation. Arthur sat across from his old friend, watching Jaden's expression shift from professional interest to personal outrage as the video played on the conference room screen. Turn it off, Jaden said after 5 minutes, his dark hands pressed flat against the mahogany table. I've seen enough. Arthur clicked the laptop shut, the silence that followed heavy as lead. They'd known each other since UT Austin, two scholarship kids trying to make good. Jaden had chosen law. Arthur had chosen land and livestock. Both had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. 25 years, Jaden said finally. Lord have mercy. Save the mercy for someone who deserves it. Arthur's voice came out steady, controlled. The rage had crystallized into something harder, colder. What are my options? Jaden straightened, the friend disappearing behind the lawyer. Texas is a community property state, but adultery changes the game. With evidence this damning, we can argue fault divorce, disproportionate division of assets in your favor. The theft of the firearm is a separate criminal matter that's a state jail felony, 2 years maximum. I want more than divorce papers and a slap on the wrist. What you want is revenge. Jaden's tone held no judgment. Question is, do you want it legal or biblical? Legal, but complete. A slow smile spread across Jaden's face. Now you're talking my language. Here's what we're going to do. The plan unfolded like a military campaign. First, protect the assets' drain joint accounts based on documented unusual withdrawals. Establish paper trails for every penny. Second, gather evidence beyond the video financial records, phone records, witness statements. Third, wait for the perfect moment to detonate the bomb. Elliot's company anniversary party, Arthur said. 3 weeks away. Big society event at the Regency. Press, business partners, everyone who matters in Houston real estate. Public humiliation. Jaden nodded approvingly. Maximum damage to reputation and business. But Arthur, once you pull this trigger, there's no going back. They killed my marriage the first time they touched. I'm just choosing when to hold the funeral. Arthur left the office with a leather folder full of forms and a battle plan. His next stop was the bank, where he withdrew $50,000 in cash, matching the mysterious withdrawals from their joint account over the past year. The teller's eyes widened, but Arthur's status as a longtime customer smoothed the transaction. Building a new barn, he explained with an easy smile. Contractors prefer cash these days. The money went into a safety deposit box at a different bank, along with copies of the video files and financial records. Insurance, Jaden called it. Arthur called it ammunition. Back at the ranch, he played his role flawlessly. When Daisy mentioned needing new tires for her Mercedes, Arthur insisted on buying them himself. When Elliot stopped by to discuss the Woodlands investment, Arthur poured the good whiskey and asked detailed questions about projected returns. "You're different lately," Daisy observed one evening, studying him over dinner. "More attentive." "Just realized I've been taking things for granted," Arthur replied, refilling her wine glass. "Man gets to a certain age, starts thinking about what really matters." The irony wasn't lost on either of them, though for very different reasons. The cameras kept recording. Arthur forced himself to review the footage each night, cataloging evidence and steeling his resolve. Daisy and Elliot had grown bolder, their afternoon rendezvous becoming routine. They discussed Arthur like livestock, evaluating his worth and planning his disposal. "Maybe I should get pregnant," Daisy mused one afternoon, wrapped in Arthur's monogrammed bathrobe. "Lock down my claim before the divorce." "With his baby?" Elliot laughed. "When's the last time you let him touch you?" "Good point. But imagine his face if I tried." The casual cruelty of it made Arthur's hands shake. He'd wanted children, had accepted Daisy's excuses about timing and her career. Another lie in the foundation of lies. A week before the party, Arthur received an unexpected ally. Josephine Chen, Elliot's personal assistant, called his cell from a blocked number. "Mr. Reed, I need to speak with you, privately. It's about your brother." They met at a truck stop outside city limits, Josephine looking younger than her 35 years, stress etched in the corners of her eyes. "He's stealing," she said without preamble, sliding a flash drive across the table. "The Woodlands project it's a shell game. Fake investors, inflated costs. He's skimming millions." "Why tell me?" Josephine's laugh was bitter. "Because he promised me a percentage, a future, a lot of things. Then I found out about your wife. I'm just the help when she's not available." Arthur pocketed the drive. "What do you want?" "Nothing. Just thought you should know what kind of man your brother really is." She stood to leave, then paused. "Be careful, Mr. Reed. When cornered, your brother gets dangerous. I've seen it." The final piece clicked into place. Financial fraud, federal crime territory. Elliot wouldn't just lose his marriage and reputation, he'd lose his freedom. Arthur made 3 copies of Josephine's files, sending one to Jaden, one to his safety deposit box, and keeping one on his person. Then he called the Houston Chronicle's business reporter, an old customer from the feed store days. "Got a story for you, Carl, but it has to break at exactly the right time." The night before the party, Arthur stood in his office, loading the Colt Python he'd quietly retrieved from Elliot's office during a brotherly lunch. The weight felt right in his hands, but he locked it back in the safe. His father might have solved problems with bullets, but Arthur had learned a different way. Tomorrow he would destroy them with their own weapons: lies, greed, and betrayal. He walked through his house one last time, seeing it as it truly was, a stage set for a performance, every room tainted by deception. By tomorrow night, it would all be over. In the bedroom, Daisy slept peacefully, unaware that her world was about to collapse. Arthur watched her from the doorway, searching for some sign of the woman he'd married, finding nothing but a stranger wearing her face. "Sweet dreams," he whispered, and went to prepare his suit for the party. The storm would break tomorrow, and Arthur would be the one holding the hammer. The Regency Hotel ballroom glittered like a jewel box. 500 of Houston's elite gathered to celebrate Elliot Reed's 30 years in real estate. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms across the crowd, champagne flowed like water, and a 12-piece band played Texas swing with practiced enthusiasm. Arthur stood at the bar, nursing a whiskey and watching the room with a predator's patience. He'd dressed carefully: his best charcoal suit, the Lucchese boots Daisy had given him last Christmas, his father's gold watch. A man should look his best for a funeral. "Don't you clean up nice," Lillian said, appearing at his elbow. His older sister had their mother's sharp eyes and sharper tongue. "Though you look like you're heading to war, not a party." "Maybe both," Arthur replied, kissing her cheek. "You look beautiful, Lil." She studied him over her martini. "Something's different about you. Has been for weeks." "Just tired." "Bullshit." She lowered her voice. "I know tired and I know trouble. Which is it, baby brother?" Before he could answer, the crowd parted, and there they were: Elliot in a custom tuxedo, Daisy in a crimson dress that had cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. They moved through the room like royalty, accepting congratulations and air kisses, playing their parts to perfection. "My beautiful wife," Arthur said when they reached him, pulling Daisy close for the crowd's benefit. She smelled of expensive perfume and another man's cologne. "Don't you two look perfect together?" Elliot boomed, slapping Arthur's shoulder. "The golden couple of Harris County." "The last time," Arthur thought. "The last time you'll touch me, brother." The evening proceeded according to script. Dinner, prime rib, Elliot's favorite. Speeches, the mayor, 2 congressmen, a parade of business associates, more champagne. Arthur sat at the family table, Daisy on his right, Lillian on his left, watching everything with the detachment of a man already gone. At 9:17 p.m., Arthur passed a flash drive to Carl from the Chronicle, who was covering the event for the society pages. At 9:32 p.m., Sheriff Mike Rodriguez arrived in full uniform, taking a position near the main entrance. At 9:45 p.m., Elliot rose to give his keynote speech. 30 years, Elliot began, his voice carrying across the hushed ballroom. 30 years of building dreams from dirt, of turning Houston's landscape into Houston's future. Arthur let him talk, let him paint himself as a visionary, a community pillar, a man of integrity. The higher the pedestal, the farther the fall. "And I couldn't have done it without family," Elliot continued, raising his champagne. "My beautiful sister Lillian, and my brother Arthur, who taught me that honest work and family loyalty are the only foundations that matter." "Speaking of family," Arthur said, standing slowly. The room turned to him, expecting a toast. "My brother asked me to say a few words tonight." He walked to the podium, each step measured, deliberate. Elliot beamed, stepping aside with a flourish. Daisy smiled from the table, ruby lips curved in anticipation of some sentimental tribute. "Elliot's right," Arthur began, his voice steady as bedrock. "Family loyalty is everything. It's what our daddy taught us, what built our businesses, what should matter most in this world." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. "Which is why," Arthur continued, his tone hardening, "discovering that my brother has been sleeping with my wife for the past 2 years feels like a special kind of betrayal." The silence hit like a physical force. Elliot's face drained of color. Daisy's champagne glass slipped from nerveless fingers, shattering on the floor. "You see," Arthur said conversationally, as if discussing the weather, "when a man trusts his brother to help with his business, to be his best man at his wedding, to sit at his table and eat his food, he doesn't expect that brother to be bedding his wife in his own home, on his father's desk, while he's away earning the money they're spending." "Arthur, stop!" Elliot's voice cracked. "You don't know what you're—" "Oh, but I do." Arthur pulled out a remote control. "I know exactly what I'm saying, and I have proof." The ballroom's main screen, meant for celebration videos, flickered to life. There was no audio. Arthur had that much mercy, but the images were crystal clear. Elliot and Daisy, tangled together on the living room sofa, on Arthur's desk, their faces unmistakable, their guilt absolute. The room erupted. Screams, gasps, chairs scraping as people stood for a better view or fled in horror. Someone, maybe Lillian, shouted, "Turn it off!" But Arthur let it play for 30 seconds that felt like 30 years. When he finally clicked off the screen, the damage was done. Daisy sat frozen, tears streaming down her face, her crimson dress now looking like blood. Elliot lunged forward, rage replacing shock. "You son of a bitch! You filmed, you violated—" Sheriff Rodriguez intercepted him smoothly. "Mr. Reed, I'm going to need you to calm down." "Additionally," Arthur continued as if uninterrupted, "my brother has been stealing from his investors. Fraud, embezzlement, the whole Texas two-step. Carl Stevens from the Chronicle has all the documentation. Should make interesting reading in tomorrow's paper." Now the panic was complete. Investors pushed forward, shouting questions. Reporters materialized like vultures, cameras flashing. Elliot's business partners backed away as if he were radioactive. "Elliot Reed," Sheriff Rodriguez announced, his voice cutting through the chaos. You're under arrest for theft of a firearm and suspicion of fraud. You have the right to remain silent." As they cuffed his brother, Arthur finally looked at Daisy. She stared back, mascara running. The beautiful mask finally cracked to show the ugly truth beneath. "The divorce papers will be filed Monday," he said quietly, but his words carried in the sudden hush. "I'd suggest you find somewhere else to sleep tonight. And Daisy, that designer dress you're wearing? I bought that too. You might want to leave it at the house when you collect your things." He turned to go, then paused. "Oh, and brother, that Colt Python you stole? Daddy always said it would protect what's mine. Turns out he was right, just not the way he thought." Arthur walked through the crowd, which parted like the Red Sea. Lillian caught his arm at the door. "Jesus, Arthur, was that necessary?" He looked back at the wreckage, Elliot in handcuffs. Daisy collapsed in tears, 500 witnesses to their destruction. "They had every chance to stop," he said simply. "They chose this." Outside, the Houston night was humid and heavy with the promise of rain. Arthur loosened his tie and walked to his truck, leaving behind 25 years of lies and the two people who'd destroyed everything he'd believed in. His phone was already ringing reporters, lawyers, probably Daisy. He turned it off and drove into the darkness, toward whatever came after the end of the world. Behind him, lightning split the sky, and the storm finally broke. Morning came like a hangover, slow, painful, and unwelcome. Arthur woke in his truck, parked at the edge of his property, where he used to take Daisy stargazing in their early years. The rain had passed, leaving the air thick with the smell of wet earth and new beginnings. His phone showed 47 missed calls. He deleted them all without listening. The ranch looked different in the dawn light, like a crime scene after the yellow tape comes down. Every fence post, every building held memories now poisoned. Arthur walked through the main gate, his boots squelching in the mud, and found Hank waiting on the porch with a thermos of coffee. "Figured you'd need this," the old man said, pouring black liquid into 2 cups. "Hell of a thing, what you did last night." "Had to be done." "Maybe so." Hank sipped his coffee, studying Arthur with eyes that had seen their share of heartbreak. "Question is, what happens now?" Before Arthur could answer, dust clouds announced visitors. 3 vehicles in quick succession, Jaden's BMW, a news van, and Lillian's pickup. The aftermath had begun. "Mr. Reed," a reporter jumped out before her van fully stopped. "Can you comment on—" "Get off my property." Arthur's voice was calm, deadly. "You've got 10 seconds. Jaden intervened smoothly, guiding the reporter back. "My client has no comment at this time. Any media inquiries go through my office." Lillian pushed past them all, wrapping Arthur in a fierce hug. "You magnificent, stupid bastard," she whispered. "Mom would have been proud." Inside the house, evidence of Daisy's hasty departure littered every surface. Dresser drawers hung open, jewelry box emptied, her wedding dress still hanging in the closet like a ghost. Arthur stared at it for a long moment before pulling it down and tossing it in the hallway. "She came by around 3 a.m., Hank reported. "Took what she could carry. Left this." A note on the kitchen counter, Daisy's flowing script, "You've destroyed everything. I hope you're happy." Arthur crumpled it without reading further. "What about Elliot?" "Still in county lockup," Jaden said, spreading legal documents across the dining table. "Bail hearings tomorrow, but with the fraud charges, he's looking at a minimum $500,000 bond. His assets are frozen pending investigation." "Good. There's more." Jaden's expression darkened. "Daisy's hired Randall Morrison best divorce attorney money can buy. He's already filing motions. Claims the video evidence was obtained illegally, that you've been emotionally abusive, that she deserves half of everything plus damages." Arthur laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Let her try." The landline rang. Lillian answered, her face tightening. "It's Mom's sister in Amarillo. Says it's all over the news up there." And it was. By noon, the scandal had spread across Texas like wildfire. Houston Chronicle ran Carl's expose on the front page. "Real estate moguls fall. Sex, lies, and fraud in Houston's elite." Local TV picked it up, then regional, then national. Arthur's phone rang nonstop until he yanked it from the wall. Sheriff Mike arrived in the afternoon, looking every one of his 62 years. Media's camped outside the county jail. Elliot's lawyers screaming about entrapment, illegal surveillance, the whole 9 yards. Will it stick? Not a chance. Video was taken in your own home that's legal as Sunday. The fraud evidence came from a whistleblower. He's cooked, Art. Question is how long he'll marinate. That evening, Arthur sat alone in his office, the Colt Python back in its display case where it belonged. The house felt enormous, empty, like a museum after closing time. He'd won, executed his plan perfectly, destroyed his enemies completely. So why did victory taste like ashes? The answer came with nightfall and the dreams that followed. Daisy's laughter echoing through empty rooms, Elliot's voice from childhood, teaching him to ride, to shoot, to be a man. 25 years of lies, yes, but also 25 years of life, now burned to nothing. Arthur woke at 3 a.m., shaking and soaked in sweat. He stumbled to the bathroom and barely made it to the toilet before the waves of nausea hit. When nothing else would come up, he sat on the cold tile floor and finally let himself feel the full weight of what he'd lost. Not just a wife, not just a brother, but the entire foundation of who he thought he was. The next morning, Jaden found him passed out in the barn, an empty whiskey bottle beside him and hay in his hair. "Come on," Jaden said gently, helping him to his feet. "Let's get you cleaned up. War's not over yet." Arthur let himself be led back to the house, past the sofa he'd already marked for burning, past the desk that would never feel clean again. In the shower, he scrubbed until his skin was raw, trying to wash away memories that had soaked too deep. When he emerged, Lillian had breakfast waiting eggs, bacon, biscuits with cream gravy, comfort food, the kind their mother used to make after their father's funeral. "Eat," she commanded. "You look like death warmed over. Feel worse. Good. Means you're still human." She poured coffee strong enough to float horseshoes. "Question is, what kind of human do you want to be now?" Arthur looked around his violated home, at the gaps where Daisy's things used to be, at the business documents that suddenly seemed meaningless. "I don't know," he admitted. "I really don't know. But first things first. The war might be won, but battles remained. Lawyers to meet, papers to sign, a life to somehow rebuild from scorched earth." As if reading his mind, Lillian squeezed his shoulder. "One day at a time, baby brother. That's all any of us can do." Outside, reporters waited. Inside, ghosts lingered. And somewhere in a jail cell, his brother sat plotting revenge of his own. The storm had broken, but Arthur suspected the worst weather was yet to come. 2 weeks after the scandal broke, Arthur stood in his lawyer's office staring at an ultrasound image that changed everything. The anonymous envelope had arrived that morning. No return address, no note, just the grainy black and white proof that Daisy was 8 weeks pregnant. "Could be a fake," Jaden suggested, though his tone indicated he didn't believe it. "Timing's suspicious." "It's real." Arthur knew it in his gut, the same instinct that had led him to install those cameras. "Question is, whose is it?" The math was cruel but simple. 8 weeks ago, Daisy had barely let him touch her hand, much less anything else. Their last intimate moment had been months before that, a perfunctory encounter she'd clearly endured rather than enjoyed. If she's claiming it's yours, she will. Arthur set the image down, his jaw tight. It's her only play for sympathy, the betrayed wife, pregnant and abandoned. Then we demand a paternity test. Texas law allows it, especially with documented infidelity. Arthur nodded, but his mind was already 3 moves ahead. This was Elliot's child had to be, which meant Daisy had been planning this for months, maybe years. Get pregnant, divorce him, claim the ranch through child support and alimony. Keep the Reed name and the Reed money while sleeping with his brother. The thought made him want to punch something. Instead, he called Mike. "Need a favor," he said when the sheriff answered. "That video evidence, can you make sure copies get to Daisy's lawyer? The full versions?" "That's playing dirty, Art." "She's playing dirtier." That afternoon, Josephine called from a burner phone. "Thought you should know Elliot made bail. $500,000 cash posted by some shell company out of Dallas. He's out." Arthur's blood chilled. Where is he now? Nobody knows. He didn't go to his condo that's been seized. Didn't go to the office that's crawling with feds. A pause. "Be careful, Mr. Reed. I know him. When he's cornered, he gets mean. Arthur hung up and immediately called Hank. Need you to keep an eye on the property. Elliot's out. I'll bring my Winchester, the old man promised. That son of a bitch shows up here, he'll leave with more holes than he came with. But Elliot was too smart for a direct assault. Instead, he attacked through the media, giving an exclusive interview to a Dallas morning show. Arthur watched from his kitchen, coffee growing cold as his brother played the victim with Oscar-worthy skill. I loved my brother, Elliot said, tears that almost looked real sliding down his face. Yes, I made a mistake with Daisy. But love isn't something you can control. And these fraud allegations? Complete fabrications by a jealous man trying to destroy me. What about the video evidence? The host pressed. Obtained illegally. Edited, probably. My brother's a smart man, smart enough to doctor evidence when he needs to. Arthur threw his mug against the wall, ceramic exploding in a satisfying crash. But the interview wasn't done. The real victim here is Daisy, Elliot continued. 8 weeks pregnant, thrown out of her home, vilified by a vindictive husband who'd rather destroy his own family than admit his marriage failed. So they were playing that card already. Arthur grabbed his keys and headed for Jaden's office, but stopped when he saw the crowd outside: reporters, photographers, even a few protesters with signs reading, "Justice for Daisy," and "Abusers hide behind money." He reversed course, heading for the back entrance, and found Lillian waiting in the parking garage. Figured you'd need an escort, she said. Come on, I know another way. They took service elevators and maintenance corridors, finally reaching Jaden's office through a route that would have made a spy proud. Inside, the legal team was in full crisis mode. They're painting you as the villain, Jaden said bluntly. Jealous husband who entrapped his innocent wife and brother. The pregnancy angle is gold for them. Nothing plays better than an expectant mother wronged. So what do? We fight back with truth. Jaden pulled out a folder. Josephine sent more evidence. Elliot's been skimming from investors for 3 years. We're talking millions in fraudulent transfers, fake companies, the works. Plus, he smiled grimly. She recorded him. Audio files of him discussing the affair, planning to steal your business, even joking about the pregnancy trap. Arthur listened to the recordings, each word another nail in his brother's coffin, but it was the last recording that stopped his heart. Once the baby's born, she'll file for divorce, claims Arthur's abusive, unfit father. I'll swoop in as the concerned uncle, help raise the kid. Few years later, we're married, and I've got everything: the ranch, the business, the whole Reed legacy. What if Arthur fights? Daisy's voice, calculating as a banker. Then we make sure he can't. Plenty of ways to make a man disappear in Texas. Hunting accident, maybe. Or he drinks himself to death. Wouldn't be hard to believe after what we've put him through. The recording ended. Silence filled the room like concrete. They were planning to kill me, Arthur said finally, his voice hollow. Eventually, yes. Jaden's face was grim. This goes beyond divorce court. This is conspiracy, attempted fraud, possibly attempted murder if we can prove intent. Arthur stood abruptly, needing air, needing space, needing to hit something until his knuckles bled. Instead, he walked to the window and stared out at Houston's skyline, the city that had been his whole world until 2 weeks ago. Send everything to the DA, he said quietly. All of it. Let them burn. Arthur. Do it. He turned back, and something in his eyes made Jaden step back. They want to paint me as the villain? Fine. But I'll be damned if I let them win. That's my nephew or niece she's carrying, Elliot's bastard. That child deserves better than those two as parents. What are you saying? I'm saying we fight for custody. Prove them both unfit. Save that baby from being raised by a couple of sociopaths. It was a declaration of total war, and everyone in the room knew it. But Arthur was past caring about casualties. They'd already taken everything that mattered. All that was left was making sure they paid the full price. That night, alone in his empty house, Arthur sat in his father's old chair and loaded the Colt Python. Not to use, he wasn't that far gone. But holding it, feeling its weight, reminded him who he was. A Reed, a Texan, a man who protected what was his, even if all he had left to protect was his name and an unborn child who might not even share his blood. The phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, Then curiosity won. "Hello, Arthur." Daisy's voice soft and dangerous. "We need to talk. About the baby. About everything." "Nothing to talk about. See you in court." "Oh, I don't think you want that." She paused, and he could picture her smile. "Not when I tell them about your drinking, your temper. That time you grabbed my wrist so hard it bruised. Remember?" He did remember holding her back from walking into traffic during an argument, leaving marks he'd agonized over for days. She'd laughed it off then. Now it was ammunition. "You're really going to play it that way?" "I'm going to play it every way I have to." The softness vanished, leaving pure venom. "You destroyed my life. Now I'm going to destroy yours. That baby I'm carrying? It's going to cost you everything." She hung up. Arthur set the phone down carefully, then walked outside to the paddock where his horses waited. They nickered softly, sensing his distress, and he found comfort in their simple honesty. "At least you can't lie," he told his favorite mare, stroking her neck. "Can't cheat, can't betray. Just are what you are." In the distance, thunder rolled across the prairie. Another storm coming. Arthur breathed deep, tasting rain on the wind, and prepared for the next battle in a war that was far from over. The Harris County Hospital delivery room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Arthur stood outside, Jaden beside him, waiting for the moment that would define everything. 7 months had crawled by since the scandal. 7 months of legal maneuvering, media circus, and Daisy's swelling belly becoming the most photographed pregnancy in Houston. "DNA test team's ready," Jaden murmured, checking his phone. "Judge's order is ironclad. The moment that baby's born, we get our sample." Arthur nodded, his jaw tight. Through the small window, he could see Daisy's mother holding her daughter's hand, shooting venomous glances his way. No sign of Elliot. He was serving pretrial detention after violating bail conditions by contacting witnesses. A baby's cry pierced the air. Arthur's heart clenched despite himself. Innocent life born into a hurricane of lies. The door opened and a nurse emerged. "It's a boy, healthy, 8 pounds even." "Congratulations on becoming an uncle," Jaden said quietly. Uncle. The word tasted like copper pennies. Arthur watched the medical team enter with their testing kit, Daisy's lawyer protesting uselessly. Texas law was clear with documented adultery. Paternity testing was mandatory. 3 days later, the results arrived by courier. Arthur sat in his kitchen, the envelope heavy as a tombstone. Hank and Lillian flanked him like bodyguards. "Want me to read it?" Lillian offered. "No." Arthur tore it open, scanned the percentages and scientific jargon until he found the conclusion. Probability of paternity, Elliot Reed, 99.97%. The relief hit him like whiskey burning, clarifying, absolute. Not his child, not his responsibility, not his failure. "Thank Christ," Hank muttered. "Would have been a hell of a thing raising your brother's bastard." But the drama was far from over. At the custody hearing, Daisy played her last desperate card. "I planned this pregnancy," she announced from the witness stand, tears streaming. "I wanted Arthur to think it was his, to save our marriage. I loved my husband despite what you've heard. This was supposed to bring us together." The judge, a stern woman named Patricia Hawkins, wasn't buying it. "Mrs. Reed, you're telling this court you deliberately conceived a child with your brother-in-law to deceive your husband?" Yes, but out of love." "That's not love," Judge Hawkins said coldly. "That's manipulation. And considering the evidence of financial fraud presented by Mr. Reed's counsel, it appears this pregnancy was part of a larger scheme to secure assets through false pretenses." The ruling was swift and brutal. Daisy would receive no spousal support beyond the state minimum. Child support would come from Elliot, currently facing 15 to 20 for fraud. The ranch, the business, all marital assets would remain with Arthur. "Your Honor," Daisy's lawyer protested, "my client will be destitute. She has a newborn whose father is a convicted felon and whose conception was, by her own admission, a tool of deception." Judge Hawkins removed her glasses, fixing Daisy with a stare that could freeze hell. "Actions have consequences, counselor. Your client made her choices." 2 weeks later, Elliot faced his own reckoning. The federal courthouse downtown was packed, investors and reporters fighting for seats. Arthur sat in the back row, watching his brother in an orange jumpsuit and shackles. The evidence was overwhelming. Josephine testified for 3 hours, detailing every forged document, every stolen dollar. Email after email scrolled across the courtroom screens, Elliot bragging about fleecing suckers, threatening partners who asked questions, planning to flee to Costa Rica with that sweet real estate money. "Mr. Reed," the prosecutor said, "you stole approximately $2.3 million from people who trusted you. Many were retirees who lost their life savings. Do you have anything to say?" Elliot stood, his chains rattling. For a moment, Arthur saw the boy who'd taught him to throw a football, who'd held him when their mother died. Then that boy vanished, replaced by a stranger with dead eyes. "I built this city," Elliot said, his voice flat. "Every one of those investors made money off my sweat for years, so I took a little extra at the end. That's business." "That's theft," the judge corrected. 15 years federal prison, no possibility of parole for 10, plus restitution of all stolen funds. As they led Elliot away, he turned and found Arthur in the crowd. Their eyes met across the courtroom, a lifetime of brotherhood reduced to this moment. Elliot mouthed something, maybe, "I'm sorry," maybe, "fuck you." Arthur would never know which. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. "Mr. Reed, how does it feel to see your brother sentenced?" Arthur stopped, considered, then spoke directly into the cameras. "Like watching someone you love die of a disease they gave themselves. Elliot chose greed over family. Now he's got 15 years to think about whether it was worth it." The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Marcus Wells, one of Elliot's victims, stood on Arthur's porch holding an envelope. "Wanted to thank you," the elderly man said. "Without your evidence, I'd have lost everything. My wife's cancer treatments, our retirement. You saved us." "I just told the truth. Sometimes that's the hardest thing." Marcus handed him the envelope. "My grandson's a horse trainer looking for work. Good kid, honest. Figured you might have room at that rescue center you're building." Arthur took the resume, shook the man's hand. "I'll call him tomorrow." As Marcus drove away, Arthur realized something had shifted. The war was over, but the rebuilding had begun, and maybe, just maybe, something good could grow from all this scorched earth. That evening, he stood in his empty house, packing boxes. The furniture would go to charity, the photos to storage. Too many ghosts here, too many memories poisoned beyond salvation. Tomorrow, the demolition crew would tear down the old barn where he'd hidden that first night, watching his life implode on a laptop screen. He'd build something new there, maybe a therapy ring for troubled kids and rescued horses. The doorbell rang. Arthur opened it to find a process server. "Arthur Reed? You're being sued for intentional infliction of emotional distress, invasion of privacy, and defamation. Have a nice day." He looked at the papers, Daisy's name at the top, and actually laughed. She was living in a trailer behind her mother's house, working at a truck stop, ostracized by everyone who mattered, and still fighting. "Good luck with that," he told the empty air, tossing the papers on the counter. Jaden would handle it like he handled everything else. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. E. Elliot somehow. From federal prison. Still plotting, still scheming, still refusing to accept defeat." Arthur deleted the message and blocked the number. Some battles weren't worth fighting anymore. Outside, the sun set over his ranch, painting the sky the color of justice, blood red fading to purple, bruise fading to black. Tomorrow would bring new fights, new challenges, new chances to rebuild. But tonight, for the first time in months, Arthur Reed slept without dreams. The sofa burned like a Viking funeral, flames eating through fabric and foam and 25 years of memories. Arthur stood upwind, watching smoke curl into the Texas sky, carrying away the last physical reminder of Daisy and Elliot's betrayal. "Bit dramatic, don't you think?" Lillian said, joining him by the bonfire. "Therapeutic," Arthur corrected, taking a pull from his beer. "Doc Harrison said I needed to externalize my anger." "By committing arson?" "Controlled burn. There's a difference." 6 months had passed since Elliot's sentencing. 6 months of therapy, nightmares, and rebuilding. The old ranch house stood empty now, Arthur living in the foreman's cabin while contractors gutted and renovated. Every room needed exorcism. Bad night? Lillian asked, noting the dark circles under his eyes. Heard them laughing again, in the walls, in the wind. He shook his head. Doc says it's normal. PTSD from betrayal trauma. Says it'll fade. When? When I stop listening for it. The fire crackled, consuming the last of the sofa. Tomorrow, workers would haul away the desk, the bed, anything they'd touched. Arthur was building a museum to his own pain, then burning it down piece by piece. His phone rang. Jaden's name on the screen. Got news, the lawyer said without preamble. Daisy's lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice. Judge called it frivolous and vindictive. She's been ordered to pay your legal fees. She doesn't have any money. No, but it goes on her credit report. She tries this again, she's looking at contempt charges. A pause. There's more. Elliot's been transferred to maximum security. Apparently he tried to hire someone to hurt you. Another inmate snitched. Arthur closed his eyes. Even from a cage, his brother reached for his throat. Press charges? What's the point? He's already got 15 years. Could add another 5. Let it go. Arthur watched the last of the sofa collapse into embers. He's got nothing left but hate. Don't want to feed it. After Jaden hung up, Arthur walked his property, surveying the changes. Where Daisy's rose garden had been, construction workers poured concrete for the new rescue center. The main barn was expanded, filled with stalls for abandoned horses. A medical facility, a training ring, everything needed to save the animals nobody wanted. Like him. Broken, betrayed, but still standing. Mr. Reed? A young woman approached, nervous. Sarah Chen, the veterinarian he'd hired. We got a new arrival. Owner surrendered. Says the horse is too old to be useful. Arthur followed her to the trailer, where a skeletal chestnut mare stood shaking. 16 hands of neglect, ribs showing through dull coat, eyes clouded with cataracts. What's her name? Daisy. Sarah winced. Sorry, I know that's... Perfect! Arthur stepped into the trailer, hand extended. The mare sniffed, then nuzzled his palm. Hey, girl, you've had a rough time, haven't you? Me too. They unloaded the mare, settled her in a stall with fresh hay and water. Arthur stayed, watching her eat with desperate hunger. Behind him, Sarah cleared her throat. The old owner said she was a champion once, won barrel racing titles all over Texas. Then she got old, went blind in one eye, and... She shrugged. People are cruel. Yes, Arthur agreed. They are. The rescue center opened 2 months later. No fanfare, no press release. Arthur had learned to hate cameras. Just a quiet announcement in the Livestock Weekly and word of mouth through the horse community. They filled up in 3 weeks. Gonna need more stalls, Hank observed, watching Arthur work with a traumatized gelding. More staff, too. Already on it. Arthur never looked up from the horse, patient hands teaching trust again. Hired Marcus's grandson, remember? Kid's got good instincts. And deep pockets wouldn't hurt. This charity work ain't cheap. Arthur smiled grimly. Got $2.3 million coming from Elliot's seized assets. Every penny he stole going to save horses he'd have let die. It was poetic justice, Texas style. Elliot had tried to steal his legacy. Instead, he'd funded its transformation into something better. The letters started arriving a month later, dozens, then hundreds. People who'd heard the story, who'd survived their own betrayals, who wanted to help or just to thank him for showing them they weren't alone. Arthur read them in the evenings in his simple cabin, surrounded by the ghosts he was slowly learning to live with. Some nights were harder than others. Some nights the walls still whispered with Daisy's laughter, Elliot's promises. But every morning brought new horses, new chances to heal something broken. The mare named Daisy thrived under Sarah's care, blind eye and all. She'd never race again, but she'd found peace. Arthur understood the feeling. One evening, as he closed up the center, a familiar car pulled into the drive. Not Daisy, she'd learned to stay away after the restraining order. Not Elliot, he had 13 years left to serve. Josephine stepped out, older now, wearing a business suit instead of secretary clothes. Mr. Reed. Miss Chen. He studied her. This woman who'd helped destroy his brother and save his life. What brings you out here? Wanted to see what you built with the ashes. She looked around, taking in the rescue center, the healthy horses, the second chances made manifest. It's beautiful. It's necessary. She nodded, understanding. I'm moving to Dallas. New job, new life. But I wanted to say, I'm sorry, for my part in everything. I could have warned you sooner. You warned me when it mattered. Did I? She turned to go, then stopped. He writes me sometimes. Elliot, from prison. Says he's found God, wants forgiveness. Good for him. You don't believe it? Arthur thought of the murder-for-hire attempt, the text messages, the lifetime of manipulation disguised as love. I believe people show you who they are. Elliot showed me. Daisy showed me. You showed me too in the end. He offered his hand. Good luck in Dallas, Josephine. She shook it, surprised. You too, Mr. Reed. After she left, Arthur made his rounds, checking each horse, each stall, each small victory against cruelty. In the distance, Houston's lights glowed like false promises. But here, in his small corner of Texas, truth lived in the soft nickering of saved horses and the slow healing of broken things. His phone buzzed. Another unknown number. He almost ignored it, then saw the area code. Huntsville. The prison. You destroyed me. Elliot's voice ragged through the prison phone. Took everything. You took it first, Arthur replied calmly. I just showed everyone what you'd done. I'm your brother. You were. Arthur hung up and blocked this number too. Some wounds wouldn't heal, couldn't heal, shouldn't heal. They just scarred over, tough and permanent, reminders of what you'd survived. He made a final note in the ledger, locked the office, and headed to his cabin. Tomorrow would bring new horses, new challenges, new opportunities to build something good from bad soil. But tonight, he'd sit on his porch with a beer and watch the stars, a man alone but no longer lonely, scarred but no longer broken, betrayed but no longer bitter. The ghosts still whispered sometimes. But Arthur had learned to whisper back, "You have no power here anymore." And for the first time since that night he'd discovered the truth, he meant it. The morning sun painted the rescue center in shades of gold and rust when the trailer pulled up, dust swirling behind it like a prayer. Arthur set down his coffee, watching a woman struggle with the latch. She moved with the efficiency of someone who'd handled horses all her life, but her shoulders carried a weight that had nothing to do with the injured animal inside. "Need a hand," Arthur called, already moving toward her. The woman turned, and he caught his breath. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, in that weathered Texas way that spoke of honest work under hard sun, but because her eyes held the same haunted quality he saw in his mirror every morning. "Rebecca Morrison," she said, her handshake firm despite the tremor in her voice. "From the Double R, next property over. My quarter horse, she. Truck clipped her yesterday. Vet said you could help." Arthur peered into the trailer. The mare stood three-legged, her left foreleg wrapped in bloody bandages, but it was the neat professional quality of the wrapping that caught his attention. "You do this yourself?" "Used to be a vet tech before." She didn't elaborate on before what. Didn't need to. Together they unloaded the mare, Rebecca murmuring soothing nonsense as they guided her into the medical stall. Arthur watched her work checking vitals, adjusting bandages, administering antibiotics with practiced ease. "Why aren't you still practicing?" he asked. "Why does a man with a perfectly good ranch house live in the foreman's cabin?" she countered. "Touché." They worked in companionable silence, the mare settling under their combined care. Rebecca had good hands, gentle but sure, the kind of hands that had known both healing and hurt. "Heard about your rescue center," she said finally. "What you're doing here. It's good work. Just giving second chances where I can. Sometimes that's all any of us need." She stroked the mare's neck. "Her name's Hope. Stupid, I know, but not stupid at all," Arthur said quietly. The moment stretched between them, fragile as spun glass. Then his phone shattered it. Mike's ringtone urgent in the morning quiet. "Arthur, we got a situation." The sheriff's voice was tight. "Elliot's transport van got hit in that storm last night. 3 guards dead. He's in the wind." The blood drained from Arthur's face. "How long?" 6 hours, maybe 7. Every unit in 5 counties is looking, but... Mike paused. He had help. Professional job. And Art? They found plans in his cell. Detailed ones. About your ranch. Rebecca watched Arthur's transformation from gentle horseman to something harder, more dangerous. I should go, she said. No. Arthur's hand found her arm, gentle but insistent. It's not safe. Please. Just until we know more. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but I need to call my foreman. Let him know about Hope. While she made her call, Arthur walked his property line with new eyes. Every shadow could hide his brother. Every sound might herald disaster. He'd gotten comfortable, soft, let his guard down. Mr. Reed? Sarah appeared, leading a group of volunteers. Should we cancel today's sessions? No. But nobody works alone. Groups of 3 minimum, and everyone stays away from the tree lines. The day passed in tense vigilance. Arthur stationed himself where he could watch all approaches, the borrowed Remington 870 never far from reach. Rebecca worked alongside Sarah, the 2 women falling into easy rhythm as they tended the horses. She's good, Sarah observed during a water break. Really good. We could use someone like her. Arthur watched Rebecca examine a yearling's infected hoof, her movements sure despite the circumstances. One crisis at a time, Doc. As afternoon bled toward evening, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. The horses grew restless, sensing the electricity in the air. Or maybe something else. Movement, Hank called from his truck. Northwest corner, by the old barn. Arthur grabbed the shotgun, motioning for everyone to get inside. But Rebecca stood firm beside him. I know how to shoot, she said simply. This isn't your fight. Man threatens good people doing good work? Her jaw set. That makes it everybody's fight. Before Arthur could argue, a figure emerged from the tree line. Not Elliot, too tall, too young. A teenager, maybe 16, hands raised and shaking. Don't shoot, please. I'm looking for my uncle. Uncle Arthur? Arthur's world tilted. The boy had Elliot's eyes, Daisy's nose, the child from the trial grown into a young man he'd never met. What's your name, son? James Reed. My dad, he made me come with him. Said we were family, that you'd. But he lied, didn't he? About everything? Where is he, James? The boy's face crumpled. The old barn. He's got gasoline, says he's gonna burn it all down if you don't come alone. Says you took everything from him. James, listen to me. He's crazy, the boy sobbed. Been that way since prison. Talks to people who aren't there. Makes these plans. I tried to run, but he said he'd hurt me if I didn't help. Rebecca's hand found Arthur's arm. You can't go alone. Can't risk anyone else either. He looked at the boy, his nephew, blood of his blood, innocent of his parents' sins. James, I need you to be brave. Go with this lady. She'll keep you safe. Uncle Arthur. It's okay, son. Your dad and I, we got old business to settle. But whatever happens, you remember you're not him. You get to choose who you become. Arthur walked toward the old barn, shotgun loose in his hands. Behind him, he heard Rebecca organizing the evacuation, her voice calm and commanding. Good. They'd be safe. The barn loomed before him, dark against the darkening sky. His brother's voice drifted out, singing an old song their mother used to hum. Off-key, broken. Elliot? There he is! Elliot emerged from the shadows, a revolver in one hand, gas can in the other. Prison had not been kind, his hair gone gray, his face gaunt, madness dancing in his eyes. My baby brother, come to finish what you started? I came to finish what you started, Arthur corrected. Put the gun down. Let's talk. Talk? Elliot laughed high and wild. Like we talked before you destroyed my life? Before you turned my own son against me? You did that yourself. Liar. Elliot raised the gun, hand shaking. You poisoned them all. Daisy, James, everyone. Made them think I was the monster. You are the monster, Elliot. But you don't have to be. Put the gun down. Let me get you help. Help? Elliot's laugh turned to sobbing. You want to help? Then burn with me, brother. Burn like everything I built burned. He started pouring gasoline, the acrid smell filling the air. Arthur calculated distances, angles. One shot, maybe two, before Elliot could react. But this was still his brother, the boy who'd taught him to ride, the man who'd held him at their father's funeral. "Remember Dad's words," Arthur said softly. "Blood before money, family above all." "Dad's dead. You killed that too." "No, Elliot. I honored it, by stopping you from dishonoring it worse." Thunder cracked overhead. The first drops of rain began to fall. "It's over," Arthur continued. "You're sick. Prison broke something that was already cracked. But James is here. Your son needs you to be better than this." "My son." Elliot's gun hand wavered. "He hates me. He's scared. There's a difference. You can still be the father he needs, the brother I remember. Just put the gun down." For a moment, Arthur thought he'd reached him. Elliot's face softened, the madness retreating. Then lightning split the sky, illuminating Rebecca and James watching from the distance, and Elliot's expression twisted. "No! You don't get a happy ending, not when I'm rotting." He raised the gun. Arthur moved without thinking, diving left as the bullet cracked past his ear. The shotgun boomed once, buckshot catching Elliot in the shoulder, spinning him around. The gas can fell, fuel spreading across the barn floor. Elliot's dropped gun skittered away. He crawled toward it, leaving a blood trail, still muttering about betrayal and revenge. Then another gunshot, smaller caliber, from behind Arthur. Elliot jerked and lay still. Arthur turned to find Josephine lowering a smoking .38, her face grim but resolved. "Followed him from Dallas," she said simply. "Figured he'd come here. Old habits." They stood in the rain, watching Elliot's blood mix with gasoline and water. Somewhere behind them, James was crying. Rebecca's voice offered comfort. "Is he?" Josephine knelt, checking for a pulse. "No, it's over." Arthur felt nothing. No relief, no sorrow, just empty space where his brother used to be. "Thank you," he said. "Don't." Josephine stood, holstering her weapon. "I didn't do it for you. Did it for that boy. He deserves better than visiting his dad in prison forever." Sirens wailed in the distance. Mike would handle the scene, the questions, the paperwork. But first, Arthur had a nephew to comfort and a life to somehow rebuild, again. As he walked back toward the rescue center, Rebecca met him halfway. Without words, she took his hand. Her touch anchored him to the present, away from the ghosts and gunsmoke. "It's done," he said. "No," she replied gently. "It's just beginning. That boy needs family. Real family." Arthur looked at James, huddled under a blanket, orphaned by violence and madness. His brother's son. His responsibility now. "Yeah," he said. "I suppose he does." The storm was passing, stars beginning to peek through the clouds. Tomorrow would bring questions, lawyers, probably reporters. But tonight, Arthur Reed had a rescue center full of people who'd stood by him, a woman whose hand fit perfectly in his, and a nephew who needed to learn that the sins of the father didn't have to become the fate of the son. It wasn't the ending he'd wanted, but maybe it was the beginning he needed. 3 months had passed since Elliot died in the rain. 3 months of lawyers and child services and a scared boy learning to trust again. James lived in the main house now, the one Arthur had finally made himself re-enter. Together they'd painted over the memories, replaced the furniture, made it new. Uncle Arthur? James stood in the doorway of the kitchen, still hesitant despite Arthur's constant reassurances. Miss Morrison called. "Says her mare's got colic. Wants to know if you can come." "When?" "Now, if possible." Sounded worried. Arthur grabbed his medical kit. In the months since Hope's arrival, Rebecca had become a regular fixture at the rescue center. But this was the first time she'd called him to her place. "Want to come?" he asked James. The boy was good with horses, gentle like his mother should have been. "If that's okay." "Always okay, son." The drive to the Double R took 20 minutes through pastures green from spring rain. James fiddled with the radio, settling on classic country. They didn't talk much, both still learning how to be family, but the silence was comfortable. Rebecca's ranch was smaller than Arthur's, but meticulously maintained. She met them at the gate, worry creasing her face. "It's Buttercup. Found her down an hour ago. She's back up, but..." She led them to the barn. Temperature's elevated. Gut sounds are off. Arthur examined the mare while Rebecca held her head. James watched intently, absorbing everything. Mild impaction, Arthur diagnosed. Caught it early. She'll be fine with some mineral oil and walking. They worked together, administering treatment. Rebecca's hands were steady, but he noticed the slight tremor when their fingers brushed passing supplies. "James, would you walk her for a bit?" Arthur asked. "Slow circles in the arena." After the boy left, Rebecca sagged against the stall door. "Sorry, I panicked. It's just, she's all I have left from before." "Before what?" She was quiet so long Arthur thought she wouldn't answer. Then, "My husband, Jack, died 2 years ago. Car accident on Highway 6. She paused. "He was leaving me. Had his mistress in the passenger seat. They were both drunk." Arthur said nothing, just moved closer. "Everyone knew but me," she continued. "The whole town. Poor Rebecca, clueless while her husband spent their money on another woman. Sound familiar?" "Too familiar. I kept his life insurance. Blood money, really. Used it to buy this place. Start over. But some nights." She gestured helplessly. "Some nights I can't shake the feeling I'm just playing pretend. Like the real me died in that car too, even though I wasn't there." Arthur understood. God, how he understood. "The real you is the one who brought an injured horse to a stranger," he said. "The one who stood with me against my brother. The one teaching James that gentle hands can heal. That's who you are." She looked up at him, eyes bright with unshed tears. "How do you do it? Move forward? One day at a time, one horse at a time, one—" He hesitated, then plunged ahead. "One person who understands at a time." The barn fell quiet except for horses shifting in their stalls. Rebecca reached up, touched his face with calloused fingers. "Arthur Reed," she whispered. "What are we doing?" "Something foolish, probably." "Good. I'm tired of being wise." Their first kiss tasted of hope and hay dust, tentative but real. When they parted, both were smiling. "Uncle Arthur?" James called from outside. "Buttercup's trying to roll. Is that good?" They rushed out, but the mare was fine, just stretching after her walk. James looked between them, noting their flushed faces and close proximity. "So," he said with teenage directness, "are y'all dating now?" Rebecca laughed, the sound bright as morning. "Your uncle and I are, exploring possibilities." "Cool. He needs someone. Gets this sad look when he thinks nobody's watching." "James," Arthur protested. "What? It's true. Even Aunt Lillian says so." The drive home was different, charged with potential. James chattered about school, the horses, anything and everything. Arthur half-listened, his mind on Rebecca's smile, her strength, the way she'd made broken pieces feel whole. Over the following weeks, she became a constant presence. Morning coffee before feeding, lunch between training sessions, evening rides as the sun painted the sky crimson. James approved wholeheartedly, especially when Rebecca taught him trick riding. "She's nothing like Mom," he said one evening, watching Rebecca work with a traumatized gelding. "No," Arthur agreed. "She's not." "That's good, right? Different is good?" "Different is very good." 2 months later, on a perfect spring evening, Arthur found himself in the barn with Rebecca, helping deliver a foal. The mare had been one of their hardest rescues, starved, beaten, barely alive when she arrived. Now she was bringing new life into the world. "Almost there," Rebecca murmured, guiding the foal's legs. "One more push, Mama." The foal slid free in a rush of fluid and movement. A filly, perfect and dark as her mother. They worked in practiced tandem, clearing airways, checking vitals, ensuring the bond between mother and baby. "She's beautiful," Rebecca breathed, watching the filly struggle to her feet. "Like her godmother," Arthur said. Rebecca turned, hay in her hair, birth fluids on her jeans, exhaustion written on her face. To Arthur, she'd never looked more radiant. "What did you say?" He pulled the small box from his pocket, went to one knee right there in the stall. "Rebecca Morrison, you helped me believe in second chances, in building something new from burnt ground. Will you marry me?" The ring wasn't huge or fancy, a simple band with an inscription. First time trusting again. Arthur. Tears ran down her face. Yes. God, yes. He slipped the ring on her finger with hands that shook only slightly. Behind them, the filly found her feet, wobbling but determined. New life, new love, new chances. They were married 6 weeks later in the rescue center's main arena. Nothing fancy Lillian's barbecue, Hank's home-brewed beer, Mike officiating with a mail-order license. James served as best man, proud in his first real suit. To second chances, Mike toasted, raising his beer. To horses that teach us to trust again, and to finding love where you least expect it in the ashes of what came before. Arthur held his wife's hand, watching their friends and family celebrate under string lights and stars. Josephine had come from Dallas, bringing a substantial donation to the center. Even Marcus Wells attended with his grandson, now their lead trainer. No regrets? Rebecca whispered. None, Arthur said, meaning it. You? Only that we didn't meet sooner. Maybe we weren't ready sooner. Maybe we needed to break first, to appreciate being whole. She kissed him as the band struck up a waltz. They danced on dirt and sawdust, surrounded by rescued horses and rescued hearts. It wasn't the life Arthur had planned, but it was the life he'd earned one betrayal, one bullet, one choice at a time. As the party wound down and guests departed, Arthur stood with his wife and nephew, looking out over the ranch. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. But tonight, under the vast Texas sky, Arthur Reed was exactly where he belonged. Home. Finally, truly home. 5 years had passed since the wedding, and the economic storm of 2008 had finally caught up with Arthur's construction supply business. He sat at his desk, staring at numbers that refused to lie: revenue down 60%. 3 competitors already shuttered. Contractors defaulting on payments left and right. How bad? Rebecca asked from the doorway, 2 mugs of coffee steaming in her hands. Bad enough. Arthur accepted the coffee gratefully. Maybe fatal. She settled into the chair across from him, studying the spreadsheets with the same intensity she brought to examining injured horses. The rescue center's bleeding money, too. Feed costs are up, donations are down. People can't afford to help horses when they can't feed their own kids. So what do we do? Rebecca was quiet for a moment, then, remember last month? Those folks from Minnesota who stayed 3 days just to ride and hear your stories? The Johnsons, nice people. They paid $500 and said it was the best vacation they'd had in years. She leaned forward. What if that's our answer? Merge the ranches, create a destination, trail rides, cowboy skills workshops, authentic Texas experiences for people who've lost touch with the land. Arthur considered it. The idea had merit: combine their properties, create something unique. But it meant letting strangers onto his land, into his life. Uncle Arthur? James appeared in the doorway, now 21 and home from Texas AANDM for spring break. There's a letter for you from Huntsville. Arthur's blood chilled. Huntsville meant prison. Prison meant Elliot. The letter was short, written in shaky handwriting that barely resembled his brother's once confident script. Arthur, they say I'm dying. Liver cancer, probably from the drinking. Few months left, maybe less. I need to tell you something before I go. Dad knew about Daisy. Found out a month before his heart attack. Made me promise to protect you, to stop it. I failed him. Failed you. Failed everyone. I don't ask for forgiveness. Just wanted you to know Dad loved you best. Always did. Your brother, still, despite everything. Elliot Arthur read it twice, then handed it to Rebecca. She scanned it quickly, her expression softening. You going to see him? No. The word came out harder than he intended. He made his choices. I made mine. But that night he stood at his father's grave, the letter burning a hole in his pocket. The old man's headstone was simple, just his name, dates, and beloved father. Nothing about the secrets he'd taken to his grave. You knew, Arthur said to the stone. You knew, and you said nothing. Were you protecting me? Or were you just as foolish as I was, believing in family above truth? The wind whispered through the cemetery oaks, carrying no answers. The next morning, Arthur found Rebecca in the barn, working up a business plan on her laptop. Old West Adventure Ranch, she said, showing him the screen. Combine both properties, offer week-long immersive experiences, Cattle drives, campfire cooking, horseback adventures. Market to people who want to escape their cubicles and remember what America used to be. You really think city folks would pay for that? Look at this. She pulled up a travel website. Dude ranches in Montana charging $2,000 a week. We could do better. We've got the rescue story, the authenticity, the Texas mystique. Arthur studied the numbers. It could work. Hell, it had to work. They spent the next months transforming both ranches. The main house became a lodge. The foreman's cabin upgraded to guest quarters. They built a proper campfire circle, converted old barns to bunkhouses, created riding trails that showcased the best of Texas hill country. James threw himself into the project, designing a website and social media presence that told their story, not the scandal, but the redemption. Horses saved, lives rebuilt, authentic experiences in an increasingly artificial world. First guests arrive next week, Rebecca announced one evening. 12 people from Chicago, Boston, New York, all looking for something real. Hope we can deliver. You will. She kissed him. You're the most real thing I know. The night before opening, Arthur walked his property one more time. So much had changed since that night he'd discovered the truth. The rescue center thrived with 40 horses now, each with their own story of survival. The business he'd built with Daisy was gone, but something better had taken its place. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but he recognized the area code. Huntsville again. Dad gone this morning. Thought you should know. James Sr. Elliott's son. Arthur hadn't heard from him since he'd aged out of the system and disappeared. Now his father was dead, and the boy man now reached out across the void. Arthur typed back, I'm sorry for your loss. If you need anything, you know where to find me. The response came quickly. Maybe someday, when I'm ready. Arthur pocketed the phone and headed inside. Rebecca was setting the table for dinner, James helping with practiced ease. His family, his real family. Elliot died this morning, he said simply. They stopped, watching him carefully. You okay? Rebecca asked. Arthur considered the question. Was he? His brother was dead, taking with him any chance of, what? Reconciliation, understanding, closure. Yeah, he said finally. I think I am. They ate dinner quietly, but not uncomfortably. Later, Arthur and Rebecca sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge over the western horizon. Any regrets? She asked. About Elliot? No. He chose his path. Arthur pulled her closer. About the rest? Sometimes. But regret's just another word for wisdom earned the hard way. Speaking of wisdom, Rebecca said, I've been thinking, if this ranch idea takes off, we'll need more help. Maybe we should reach out to Josephine, see if she wants to manage the business side. You think she'd come back? Only one way to find out. The first guests arrived on a Tuesday morning, pale and nervous and overdressed. By Tuesday evening, they were learning to rope. By Thursday, they were helping with the rescue horses. By Saturday night, gathered around the campfire listening to Arthur tell stories of old Texas, they were different people. This is what I've been looking for my whole life, one woman said, tears in her eyes. Something real. Something that matters. Arthur glanced at Rebecca, who smiled. They were on to something. 6 months later, they were booked solid through the following year. The construction supply business was gone, but the Old West Adventure Ranch was thriving. They'd hired 10 employees, including Josephine as business manager. Even Lillian helped out, teaching city folks how to make proper Texas chili. One evening, as Arthur led a sunset ride along the ridge, he pointed toward the state prison complex in the distance. What's that? A guest asked. Reminder, Arthur said, that every choice we make builds the life we live. Choose wisely. The guest nodded, not understanding but sensing the weight behind the words. As they rode back, the setting sun painted the sky in shades of redemption, gold and crimson and purple. Arthur breathed deep, tasting contentment on the evening air. The ghosts were quiet now. The past finally passed. 10 more years had swept across the Texas plains, carrying away pain and bringing unexpected gifts. Arthur stood in his office, now the ranch's welcome center, as Mike handed him back the Colt Python. Time this came home, the old sheriff said, white-haired now but still sharp-eyed. You've earned the right to display it without the weight. Arthur took the weapon reverently, feeling its familiar heft. Lot of history in this iron. Good and bad, but mostly just history now. Mike glanced around the room, taking in the photos of ranch guests, rescued horses, the life rebuilt from ashes. Your daddy would be proud. Maybe. Or maybe he'd wonder why I'm playing cowboy for tourists. No. Mike's voice was firm. He'd see a man who took the worst betrayal imaginable and built something beautiful from it. That's Texas strength, partner. After Mike left, Arthur mounted the python in a display case between two photographs, his wedding to Rebecca and a recent shot of James graduating from veterinary school. Past, present, and future in one wall. Mr. Reed? A young man with a camera stood in the doorway. I'm Tyler Brooks, from the YouTube channel Texas True Stories. Ready for the interview? Arthur had resisted for years, but Rebecca finally convinced him. Their story was part of ranch lore now, whispered about by guests. Better to control the narrative than let it control them. They sat by the corrals, horses grazing peacefully in the background. Tyler was good, respectful, letting Arthur tell it his way. People want to know, Tyler said carefully, how you found it in yourself to move forward after such betrayal. Arthur watched a rescue mare nuzzle her foal, born just that morning. You ever hear the saying, revenge is a dish best served cold? Sure. It's wrong. Revenge isn't a dish at all. It's poison you drink hoping others will die. He turned to the camera. I got my revenge, sure enough. Destroyed them completely. But you know what I learned? Revenge ends nothing. It just clears the ground. What you build after, that's what matters. So you don't regret exposing them? No. Truth needed telling. But I regret how long I held on to the anger after. Nearly cost me the chance at this. He gestured to the ranch, the horses, the life made new. Any advice for others facing betrayal? Yeah. Feel the hurt, seek the justice, then let it go. Harder than pulling a trigger, but worth more in the end. The interview wrapped, and Arthur walked Tyler to his car. The young man paused before leaving. My dad went through something similar. Wife cheated with his best friend. He never recovered, drank himself to death holding on to the hate. I'm sorry. Don't be. Watching your story, seeing this place, it helps. Shows there's another way. After Tyler left, Arthur made his rounds. The ranch operated like clockwork, now Rebecca managing the rescue side. James running the veterinary clinic, Josephine handling the business. They'd expanded again, adding a youth program for troubled kids to work with rescue horses. Broken helping broken. Late afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. A woman, gaunt and gray, wearing clothes that had seen better days. Arthur didn't recognize her until she spoke. Hello, Arthur. Daisy. 20 years of hard living had carved deep lines in her face, turned her beauty into something haunted. She stood at the gate like a ghost herself, uncertain of her welcome. Heard you were sick, he said finally. Cancer, stage 4. Doctors say I've got maybe 2 months. She coughed, a harsh sound. I'm not here for money, I just needed to see this place. See what you built. Arthur studied her, searching for the woman he'd loved, finding only echoes. Come in. I'll show you around. They walked slowly, Daisy struggling with each step. She touched fence posts like talismans, watched the horses with wonder. It's beautiful, she whispered, like something from a dream. It's real, built on honest work and second chances. Second chances, she laughed bitterly. Must be nice to believe in those. They reached a bench overlooking the pastures. Daisy sank onto it gratefully. I know you hate me, she said. You have every right. I destroyed everything good in my life for money and excitement, threw away 25 years for nothing. I don't hate you, Arthur said, surprising himself with the truth of it. Haven't for a long time. Hate takes too much energy. James, our son, Elliot's son, he volunteers here sometimes, did you know? Uses a different name, but I've seen him. He's a good boy despite us. He is. We've talked some. He's finding his way. Daisy reached into her bag, pulled out an envelope. For him. When I'm gone. Everything I have left, not much, but maybe it'll help with college loans. Arthur took the envelope. I'll see he gets it. And this. She handed him a small album. Photos from before, the good years, real years, thought maybe. Maybe you'd want to remember that not everything was a lie. Arthur flipped through the album. Their wedding, vacations, family gatherings, young faces full of hope and trust. It hurt to look at, but a clean hurt, like antiseptic on a wound. "Thank you," he said. Rebecca appeared, leading a group back from a trail ride. She took in the scene, understanding immediately. Without hesitation, she approached. "You must be Daisy. I'm Rebecca." She extended her hand. "Would you like some sweet tea? You look like you could use it." Daisy stared, then took the offered hand. "That's very kind." They sat together as the sun lowered, three people bound by history and pain and the strange grace that comes from surviving the worst. When it was time for Daisy to go, Arthur walked her to her beat-up Honda. "I'm glad," she said softly. "Glad you found happiness. You deserved better than what I gave you." "We all deserve better than our worst moments," Arthur replied. "Take care, Daisy." She drove away, and he knew he'd never see her again. 2 months later, James Jr. called to say she'd passed. Arthur sent flowers to the funeral but didn't attend. Some chapters needed to stay closed. A year passed. The ranch thrived. James married a fellow veterinarian. Lillian published a cookbook. Mike retired, spending his days teaching rope tricks to eager guests. On a perfect October evening, Arthur and Rebecca led their favorite ride sunset from the high ridge. Their guests were the usual mix lawyers and teachers and office workers, all seeking something authentic in an increasingly digital world. "See that?" Arthur pointed to the horizon where the last light painted the clouds crimson. "That's what forgiveness looks like. Every day the sun sets on what was and rises on what could be." "Is it really that simple?" a guest asked. "Simple? No, but necessary." He turned his horse toward home. "Life's going to storm on you. People you trust will betray you. Dreams will die. But if you're still breathing, you've got the choice: bitter or better. Choose better." They rode back in contemplative silence, the horses sure-footed in the gathering dusk. At the ranch, the dinner bell was ringing, Lillian's chili scenting the air. Laughter drifted from the main house where James was regaling visitors with veterinary mishaps. Arthur helped Rebecca dismount, stealing a kiss that still sparked after all these years. "Good ride?" she asked. "The best." They walked hand in hand toward the warmth and light, past the rescue paddocks where broken horses learned to trust again, past the arena where city kids discovered their courage, past all the evidence that beauty could grow from ashes. On the wall of the main house, a plaque caught the last rays of sunlight. The governor had presented it the previous year. Arthur Reed, true Texan, for service to community and demonstration of the Texas spirit, turning trials into triumph. But Arthur preferred the handwritten note tacked beside it, from a 10-year-old who'd spent a week at the ranch. "Mister, Arthur taught me that when storms come, you don't just survive them, you learn to dance in the rain." Inside, surrounded by the family he'd chosen and the life he'd built, Arthur Reed pulled his wife close and did exactly that, danced in the kitchen, while the chili bubbled and the guests laughed and the horses called goodnight to each other across the peaceful fields. Outside, the stars emerged over the Texas plains, eternal and unchanging. But beneath them, everything had changed. A man betrayed had become a man redeemed. A ranch built on lies had become a sanctuary of truth. A family destroyed had been replaced by something stronger, a family forged by choice, tested by fire, and bound by the unbreakable bonds of second chances. In the distance, a horse whinnied not in distress, but in contentment. The sound carried across the fields like a blessing, like an ending, like a beginning, like forgiveness itself, given at last to the only person who truly needed it himself. The fire in the great stone fireplace crackled softly as Arthur held Rebecca close, their shadows dancing on walls decorated with photos of lives rebuilt and hearts restored. Tomorrow would bring new guests, new challenges, new opportunities to heal. But tonight was for gratitude, for love, for the quiet recognition that sometimes the worst storms bring the clearest skies. "Penny for your thoughts," Rebecca murmured. "Just thinking about storms," Arthur said. How you can't choose when they come. But you can choose who stands beside you when they do. She smiled, understanding as always. And who's standing beside you, Arthur Reed? He looked around the room at James laughing with guests, at Lillian serving her famous cornbread, at Mike demonstrating his quick draw to amazed kids, at all the broken people who'd found wholeness here. Everyone who matters, he said. Everyone who chose to build instead of burn. Outside, the wind whispered through the mesquite trees, carrying stories of pain transformed to purpose, revenge transformed to redemption, endings transformed to beginnings. And in a house built on truth, surrounded by hearts that had learned to trust again, Arthur Reed finally understood his father's last words. Blood before money, family above all. The old man had been right. He'd just been wrong about what family meant. Family wasn't blood that betrayed you. Family was the people who helped you rebuild after the storm. Family was the choice to love again after loss, to trust again after betrayal, to dance again after the music stopped. Family was this, all of this, forever and always, until the last star faded from the Texas sky.